You're listening to the Lanterns Radio Network. We are the network dedicated to empowering the individual, illuminating the truth, defending American exceptionalism, and inspiring future generations. Stay connected and get involved at Lanterns.buzz for great radio. Get commentary and news of the day. Lanterns.buzz.
Welcome, fellow patriots. Get ready for an hour of unabashedly pro-American, pro-conservative, and pro-biblical principles. This is the Blake Johnson Program.
Hello, welcome everyone. This is the Blake Johnson Program on the Lanterns Radio Network. Thank you so much for joining us today, where we are here to fix the machine. We have a lot of stuff that I want to talk about today. I want to start by addressing something that has really taken national news, but it's really hit close to home for me. And you've probably heard about this story already. That's the very tragic Ride the Ducks accident that took place last Thursday in Branson, Missouri. As some of you know, I went to college up near Branson, Missouri, at College of the Ozarks, and one of the common things that you will see if you tour the campus of College of the Ozarks, especially during the summer, is you will see Ride the Ducks. They will go through quite regularly throughout the campus because that's one of the tourist destinations that they travel through on their route. So I'm very familiar with these boats, seeing them. So when I heard about this Thursday, it really shocked me that so many people died. There were 31 people aboard, 17 people died, and 14 people have survived. And last time I checked, they were at Cox Health in Branson. They've all been released. The survivors have been released, so that's good news. Hopefully they're all still doing well physically, though I can't imagine how they're doing mentally, spiritually too. But yes, it killed 17 people during a severe thunderstorm. And what was really odd was I was at my workplace, my full-time job that day, and it started out as a very nice day. Now, I work in Springfield. It's about 40 minutes away from Branson. So I worked there, and there was bad weather that came through there too. And I was surprised at how quickly it came through, because I was working, and all of a sudden people start shouting, "Okay, I need to go to the storm shelter." And so we go there, and I'm there for maybe 20 seconds, and they release us back, which was really odd. So it came through pretty fast. It did the same through Branson. The weather throughout most of the day, again, was just beautiful weather. And the thing about Missouri, if you're not familiar with Missouri weather, it changes constantly. You can get your forecast for the next week, and half of it will change within the hour or within the next day. I mean, it changes rapidly. And one day, there have been plenty of times where there was no calls for rain or anything at all that day, and later on in the evening, there's rain. So, and even when you get these alerts, these tornado warning alerts, these thunderstorm warning alerts, sometimes they kick in within the next 10 minutes. I mean, sometimes you don't have enough time. Sometimes the phone that you have doesn't give you the alert quick enough. I mean, it's just, it's not all constant here in Missouri. So that's one of the things that I wanted to address, because when this happened, there was a lot of people, including myself to some extent, wondering why in the world was this Ride the Duck boat out on the water. Now, these boats, they're not just boats. They ride around on wheels, too. That's how, obviously, they ride around on campus. But they also go through Lake Taneycomo there in Branson, and, they go through that. So that is one of the areas that they travel through, and the same with this case as well. So these boats are very old too. In fact, they were kept from World War II, which was a few years ago. So just a few years ago. It's been a while since we fought against Nazi Germany and Japan. But they've kept these boats, and they're really old, and they're not in very great condition either. I mean, they're not. I mean, I've seen them up close, and they look beat up. Now, not to say that they haven't ever, obviously I'm sure Ride the Ducks has tried to, make them as safe as they can, but there's only so much that you can add to these boats that are decades old. Now, I saw a couple stories that I thought were really interesting, but before I get to that, I really want to address the tragedy itself. The tragedy itself is just horrible to think about. I mean, you had 17 people die, and the biggest story out of this is that there was a family of 11, the Coleman family, that was from Indiana, came to Branson. They wanted to ride the ducks. And so they did, and they were on this boat. 9 of the 11 of this family perished Thursday. Only 2 of them survived. I think one of the mothers and her niece or nephew, survived. But everybody else died. And that's horribly tragic. I mean, like 2 or 3 generations were all but wiped out of one family. And now there is a surviving father of one of the other survivors that wasn't on the trip with them, I believe. And there's a few other family members too, but I mean, this just words cannot even begin to describe the loss that they've faced. And I believe her name's Tia Coleman. She did a press conference the other day. I don't know how she was able to do that. I mean, the fact that she was able to do it at all is just, it shows how brave she is and how much courage she has. But she came out and she talked about the struggle that she went through, that she almost drowned. She was praying to Jesus to help her find her babies and her family. And she didn't feel like she was going to survive. So when she was just about to give up, her body floats to the water where it gets warmer. She can tell she's getting ready to get to the surface, and she gets rescued. But think of that. First of all, you're in survival mode. You're trying to survive yourself, but you also obviously want your kids to survive too. But you also want to survive. So when you finally do survive, your immediate thought is, how do I get better? How do I get this water out of me that I've inhaled so much of? Then your thought is, where's the rest of my family? And then you find out that all but one other member of your family is dead. No person should ever have to go through anything like this. So, one of my friends from college actually works for one of the big local news stations here in Missouri, and he was at this press conference, and he said that immediately after this press conference was over, she immediately started bawling and wailing, and she just broke down. And obviously, I mean, like I said, if this had happened to me, I can't imagine that I would have been able to do this conference at all without breaking down. I mean, she did, obviously tear up and everything, and it's not like she was completely calm, but I again, very strong woman that she was able to do that. Another great thing about this, well, not really a great thing, not another great thing, but a great thing, some good news that you can get out of this story, is the outpouring of support from people. There's a GoFundMe page on Facebook about this family, the Coleman family specifically. And if you want to go support this, you can. Again, it's at GoFundMe.com. I'm trying to pull up the official name of the fundraiser. but it is by Lita something. But basically, I was looking at this fundraiser that started on, I believe it was Friday or Saturday, and it had, first time I checked, it had just under 30,000. The very next day, it had over 300,000, and the original goal was like 500,000. Now it's at 1 million. Now I'm looking at it, and it's at $469,657, and it's only been around for 2 days, this particular fundraiser. Now, the actual name of it is called Only Official Duck Boat Survivors, and it's by Lita Bigby. And if you want to look for that, you can. It's on GoFundMe.com, and it's part of the trending fundraiser too, so I'm sure it's probably on the front page. But you can take part in that as well. But it's a great testament to how much we as people look out for each other, and how charitable we are in America, especially. So that's very, very good. But more than anything, they need your support. They need your thoughts. They need their prayers. They need any help that they can get. Now, in regards to the screw-ups in this, I gotta be honest with you, when I first found out about this, especially when I found out how many people died, I was immediately suspicious. I was like, how do 17 people die in 2018 on an accident like this? Weren't they wearing life jackets? Well, the answer is no, they were not wearing life jackets. In fact, one of the first things that Tia Coleman said, she was in her hospital bed at the time, she said that the captain of this crew, there was a driver who died, the captain survived along with the other 13 that he survived with. But he was one of them that said when this, the waves were coming and they were really, getting really, really bad, he told the passengers, you don't need your life jackets. Excuse me? Well, then what the heck will I need a life jacket for? Now, some will say that, these waves were so violent that it may not have helped. And that's definitely a possibility. But the way I see it is, why in the world would you not use every precaution you can to survive against something like this? And there was a person, a bystander, who was nearby. There were two duck boats. The one that sank, and then there was another one just a little bit ahead of them that was able to be pulled out to safety. Those people are fine. But there were other people that were watching this. One of them who, tried to help and I think he got in the water and tried to help them. But he said he noticed that there were all these lifeboats that were just floating out in the water and no one was wearing them. Which is insanity to me. Now, you would think, when you first hear about this, you think, well, is this a violation of the law? Did they violate some law here? Well, no, they didn't actually. This is bizarre. But here in Missouri, duck boats are actually exempt from a life jacket law. When it comes to regular commercial, when it comes to regular boats, your typical boat, ages 7 and younger, you have to wear a life jacket. Well, in commercial vessels like the duck boat, you don't have to. You do have to at least have enough flotation devices for the passengers and crew, but they're not required to wear them. So I saw this, I'm like, okay, well, that's a law that needs to change. Now, I think it has to be mandatory. You do have to wear them. If you're going to go out on the water anyway, maybe not for the entire trip, but when you get ready to go into the water, yeah, you need to wear those. And it's odd. It's really odd that was a thing, especially, again, when you consider that these duck boats are freaking, 70 to 80 years old. And you don't have to wear a life jacket? You don't have to wear a flotation device? That's obviously an outdated law that needs to change. So hopefully it will. Now, when it comes to Ride the Ducks, the business itself, that's going to be interesting to see. Are they going to be able to continue to operate? Will they have to shut down? They've already said on their Facebook page that they're offering to pay for all of the funerals and all the other expenses for all the family members affected. So that's going to cost a lot of money because, again, 17 people. And then you got the survivors who will need help too, I'm sure, in some form or fashion. But I don't see them operating for a while. Last I checked, they're still not operating right now, obviously, because they're still trying to recuperate and decide what to do. But, there was a story I saw from my local news station in which an inspector had actually warned Ride the Ducks a year prior to this that these boats were not safe. Now, I don't know how you get away with still operating them if an inspector says they're not safe, but that's at least a report that I've seen. There's much more investigation that has to be done. I'm just trying to relate to you what I've seen so far. But, yeah, very, very tragic news that's taken place here in Missouri, and I am glad that it has become a national story because it's allowed people to really support them, and hopefully other places around the country that operate similar things like Ride the Ducks will take into account that maybe they need to change their policies too to make it more safe for the passengers. But yeah, it's just awful. I feel horrible for all of the passengers that were aboard, those that perished and those that survived. I can't even imagine, And they had no idea this was coming. No idea. I mean, even with these alerts, you still don't quite know. And also, one thing I thought of too, when you're in this scenario and things are getting pretty dicey out there, you look to someone to be a leader. When you have an official captain, it could be really easy to just look at what they say and say, well, okay. I mean, they're trained and they know what they're doing, so maybe I'll just listen to them. So, again, I don't think it's good to go after the passengers. I completely disagree with that. Sometimes when you're in those scenarios, there's all kinds of things going on, and things happen so fast that you look to a leader, which, again, goes back to the point, you have got to be prepared for these things. And you can't just say you don't need a life jacket. Well, you may need a life jacket. And I wonder how many people would have died, how many people would have survived, more people would have survived if they all wore life jackets. So we will see what happens with that. Hopefully in the near future we'll get some more answers to these questions. But we'll take a break, come back on the Blake Johnson program. There's a lot more to get into, a lot more serious things to talk about, and hopefully some lighthearted things to talk about as well. My name is Blake Johnson, and we will be right back after this. So here's something you're not going to hear a whole lot about in the mainstream media. The president's poll numbers have been doing very well among the public. This from the Wall Street Journal and NBC News conducted Sunday. It found that Trump's job approval rating is at an all-time high, 45%, 1 percentage point higher than his June high, while 52% of those disapproved. When it comes to the economy, Trump especially does well at 50% approval and 34% disapproval. He's anchored by 88% Republican support, combined strongly and somewhat job approval. And as Newsmax has reported, only George W. Bush had a higher approval rating in the Republican Party at the same point in his presidency. Well, obviously at the same point in his presidency, this was during the height of the Iraq War, the start of it, and shortly after 9/11. Now, this comes on the heels of the mainstream media meltdown, and I've been chomping at the bit to talk about this. So, the interwebs, the social media platforms, the mainstream media, have been losing their ever-loving mind over what the president said in his summit with Vladimir Putin in Helsinki. This U.S.-Russia summit ignited some fireworks in many out there in the media. Now, I think in some ways it's for good reason, because I think what the president said was pretty foolish. And what he said was, he was talking about Russia collusion and interference with the U.S. elections, and the president said, he was asked about if he's going to condemn Russia and if he stands with the intelligence community here in the U.S. And he said, we have people here in my intelligence community, the U.S. intelligence community, telling me that Russia interfered, and I will tell you that I had a meeting with Putin, and he said very strongly that we had nothing to do with those elections. We had nothing to do with interference, and I have to tell you, I don't see any reason why Vladimir Putin would be lying to me. I don't see any reason why they would have had some involvement in the election. And that ignited a firestorm from the same party that mocked and ridiculed Mitt Romney for referring to Russia as our number one geopolitical threat. Now, all of a sudden, the Democrat Party is concerned about Russia. No, they are not concerned about Russia. They simply hate Donald Trump so much that will use any and all measures to take him down. But what they don't realize, and I think you could argue they don't even care anymore, they're just so unhinged, is that they're actually helping the president. They're helping him greatly. And you're seeing this in part because of the job approval rating and the approval on the economy and just the overall feel that Americans are having about the president. And that's that while we don't necessarily like everything he says, his policies, his job performance says otherwise, that he is actually getting some good things done. He's doing what he said he was going to do. Now, I disagree with what the president said. I think it was really dumb to do that, especially when you have an investigation going on. Now, on the other hand, I do understand the mentality of why he said what he said. Because when you look at the intelligence community, and you look at what they have done to this administration over the years, it's pretty pathetic. People from the Obama administration trying to take down Donald Trump. You just heard about I talked about it last week, the hearing of Peter Strzok about saying, the FBI, we're going to stop Donald Trump from becoming president, essentially. At least that was the implication there. That's why they were questioning him. And so you have this going on. You have James Comey, who's just he's a piece of work, I'll tell you what. He has gone from someone who people could make the case that he was credible to now he's just trying to profit off of a book and that he wrote about his experience, and he's trying to play the victim. He's trying to play the martyr here. And I think it's just spineless, really. And, you had James Clapper, Michael Hayden, Susan Rice, many people in the Obama administration, and maybe not as much Susan Rice, but you had several of these people just being very hostile to the president, and it's understandable why he would be frustrated with all of this. However, you also don't take the word of Vladimir Putin. I saw Judge Jeanine Pirro. She does a show on Fox, and she was also one of the wackos that was on The View recently that got into a fight with Whoopi Goldberg. She immediately came out and defended the president, saying, well, what do you expect him to do, shoot Putin in the face? And I'm thinking, okay, so that's it. That's the only two options we have. He can either praise Putin, totally defend him, or he has to kill him. But that's it. Those are the only two options he has. It's foolish. There is no reason for the hysteria on the left, and there's no reason for the blind worship on the right. No reason. No reason at all. This should not be about Donald Trump. This shouldn't even be about Vladimir Putin. It's not about a personality. It's about the principle of what's going on here. Do you want a foreign power, an enemy of the U.S., trying to interfere at some level in our elections? Now, am I saying that the Russians got Donald Trump elected? No, I don't believe that for a second. I believe that he is a duly elected president. What I do believe, and what the Russians have admitted to, what the investigators have turned up, is that the reason that Russia meddled in our elections was to spread discord, to spread chaos. They wanted us at each other's throats. They are not a friend of the United States of America. And if they truly wanted to change the election, they would have gotten Hillary Clinton elected. Why in the world would they want Donald Trump elected? His policies, while his rhetoric has been dumb, his policies regarding Putin and Russia and so forth have been fairly antagonistic. We've put sanction on them. We've been pretty critical of their regime. And so, yeah, when it comes to his policies, they're actually quite good. His rhetoric, as usual, is the problem. Now, again, I think this will ultimately backfire on the left. The hysteria is just... it's not unbelievable. It's just pathetic. It's simply pathetic. It's like watching little third graders get riled up because someone took a crayon away from them or something. You know, it's just ridiculous stuff. And the thing is, they're completely hypocritical about it. Completely hypocritical about it. When you saw Barack Obama bow before a Saudi prince, when you saw Barack Obama sign that terrible Iran deal, and how he, constantly berated white Americans, and he constantly berated people that disagreed with him, the left largely said nothing. But now that the president, yes, makes a dumb mistake, but certainly not the dumbest mistake a president has ever made, and then to call it treason? To call what Donald Trump did as a treasonous thing to do? No. That's not treason at all. Treason is... it has been clearly defined in the Constitution. And that's to outright aid and abet the enemy. Give information to them, and to ultimately work against the United States. Directly work against us. Trump is not doing any of those things. You can disagree with his rhetoric. You can say what he's saying is really dumb. But he is not trying to take down America. He is not trying to prop up Putin, all the while tearing us down. Now, while I don't know that I would still subscribe to this idea, I think you could have a better case of saying that what Barack Obama did in regards to the Iran deal could be considered treasonous. Now, I don't know that I would go that far with it, but if we're using that same logic, that would be more of a better example. Not what Donald Trump did. Again, his policies show that he is not a friend of Russia, and we are not friends with Russia. All right, back in a minute.
You're listening to the Lanterns Radio Network. We are the network dedicated to empowering the individual, illuminating the truth, defending American exceptionalism, and inspiring future generations. Stay connected and get involved at Lanterns.buzz for great radio. Get commentary and news of the day. Lanterns.buzz.
A couple big stories I want to talk about. This one breaking from earlier this afternoon. So the president has decided that he's considering, at least, revoking the security clearances for 6 Obama officials. This comes as a surprise to some people, and you could probably see that liberals are losing their minds over this yet again. So, White House Press Secretary Sarah Sanders revealed during a White House press briefing that the president is looking to revoke the clearances, the security clearances from these individuals. Former CIA Director John Brennan, former FBI Director James Comey, Director of National Intelligence James Clapper, former NSA Director Michael Hayden, former National Security Advisor Susan Rice, and former FBI Deputy Director Andrew McCabe. She explained that the reason that the president wants to do this is that they have used their positions and access to information to make political attacks on the president and have, quote, monetized their clearances. She said, "The fact that people with security clearances are making baseless charges provides inappropriate legitimacy to accusations with zero evidence." Now, this, on the surface, sounds okay, because it's true, in the sense that these officials have indeed used their clearances to make political attacks. And I know at least James Comey has profited off of it. Now, I'm not 100% sure how Susan Rice has been involved in this and has been able to profit off of this, but it also causes me to be hesitant on this, because what if a Democrat gets into the White House and does this very same thing? What would Republicans say then? Now, I think the best option is just don't use your security clearance for those purposes. You know, you can have your opinions, but if a president wants to do that, I mean, I don't see anything unconstitutional about it. It's just, this seems like a knee-jerk reaction to people who are saying things that you don't like. Now, if they were using their security clearances for information to praise the president, I'm sure Trump wouldn't have any problem with keeping them with their security clearances. But it's because they are criticizing him. Now, I found it interesting how Sarah Sanders, Press Secretary Sanders, she says they have access to information, and they're using that information to make baseless claims against the president. Well, that seems a bit contradictory, though, because if they have access to information, shouldn't that make their claims worthy of attention, possibly? I mean, I'm just thinking out loud here. I'm not saying that they're, using their position in the best interest of the people, necessarily. But it almost sounds like they're a little too against it, if that makes sense. Thou dost protest too much. I found that if someone is so quick, so willing to protest against somebody else's actions, when the evidence hasn't really come out yet. I mean, Robert Mueller's investigation is still going on. It's not a good look. It seems fishy. So, I don't know that I'm for the president doing this. I can understand his frustration. I know that Senator Rand Paul, he tweeted out that he met privately with, I believe it was the president, and encouraged him to do it. Said, yes, you should revoke their security clearances. Now, on the right, it's going to seem like a win, but is it really a win? I mean, yes, it'll make you feel good, but we have to be more than about feelings. So, personally, I would say I'm against it. I don't think you should do it. I think we should have a consistent record on both sides. At the same time, I also think those Obama officials should stop using their positions to, just make money and, smear whoever it is that's in office. But, again, I don't see anything unconstitutional about it on either side, and I don't see anything illegal about it. So, that's just where I'm at on it. I'm not an expert on this, but it's not a good look for either side to be doing this. And that's the real disappointment of all of this. People will not act like grown-ups at all. It's, this side pitting itself against the other side. Pitting itself against the other side is what they're doing. But no one's getting anywhere. You're not getting the truth. You're just getting bias on the left and bias on the right. And that's not a healthy recipe for anybody. Okay, so I want to now spend some time here talking about this controversy regarding James Gunn and Ben-Shapiro and Mark Ploss and all these people, and how it all stems from the fact that we as a society are becoming more and more intolerant towards hearing any other opinion other than our own. This all started, I'll just go ahead and give you the facts first, and then we'll discuss it. This all started when an indie Hollywood filmmaker named Mark Duplass tweeted out that he had a message for those on the left. He said, "If you're interested in hearing someone from the other side, may I recommend Ben Shapiro?" He said, Ben is someone that you may not agree with, but he's factual. He tries to come at things from a logical point of view, and he's genuinely a nice person. He doesn't treat you like dirt. That's all he said. He put it out on Twitter, and that was that. Now, Duplass, from what Ben Shapiro has said, again, he's a liberal. They don't agree on very much, but he once went over and talked to Ben Shapiro, I believe at his studio, and he was asking him about how do you make a case for the Second Amendment? What is your reasoning for all of this? And Shapiro makes the case, and he also says, now there are good arguments on the left and there are good arguments on the right, but there's also bad arguments on both sides, and here's how you address all of those. So he's just trying to inform him and have an open, civil conversation. That's it. So therefore, and Ben didn't ask Duplass to do this. Duplass did this on his own free will. He said, "Hey, you guys should listen to him. Listen to his podcast. Even if you don't agree with him, at least be willing to hear the other side." Well, he was raked over the coals for that by people on the left. His followers, other celebrities, I'm sure, were not happy at all about this. And because of that, Mark later came out and issued an apology, and he also then started going after Ben Shapiro and essentially implying that Shapiro is hateful and divisive and bigoted. Now, that in and of itself is just sad to see. I mean, we're now at a point where you can no longer encourage someone to listen to a reasonable voice on the other side without being raked over the coals with it, without being called every nasty name in the book. Now, one of those people that called Duplass out, and one of those people that Mark apologized to, was director James Gunn. Now, James Gunn, he was a director for Marvel. He directed both Guardians of the Galaxy movies, Volume 1 and 2, and he was set to direct the third one. Well, James Gunn starts, calling out Ben Shapiro, calling him an a-hole, and all those different things. And he was one of the ones that influenced Mark to feel like he needed to apologize. Well, people on the right then dug into James Gunn's Twitter history and found some things from many years ago, very awful jokes that he made about pedophilia, about rape, and all those sexually degrading things. Now, James Gunn, in his defense, he says him defending himself, he says that these were all jokes. I didn't mean any of this. I have never raped anyone. I am not a pedophile. Don't have any history with any of that. No one's ever complained. None of that. So he's not acted on any of those things. He's just a comedian. He writes humor, very, very dark humor that I would never use and never, support at all. But they were just jokes. Now, apparently in 2012, a few years after these tweets, James came out and said, I don't feel comfortable making those jokes anymore. I think those are wrong. I don't believe that is a good thing to do, and I apologize. So he apologized. He's already apologized for those tweets. He apologized several years ago for that stuff. So he hasn't done any of that kind of comedy for a long time. But that wasn't good enough for the mob on the right. They pulled out all these tweets from many years ago, and they started demanding that he be fired, and ultimately Disney made the decision to fire James Gunn, and he is no longer set to direct Guardians of the Galaxy 3. And this brings up the question of, do we allow ourselves to punish people for things that they said many years ago? Are you able to make an honest mistake, apologize for it, and move on? Or, for political expedience, do we have to take you down because you're a member of the other side? Now, I will admit to you that I made a mistake. Originally, and this was before I knew about the apology, I hadn't heard anything about the apology that he made several years ago. But I thought Disney made the right decision. Now, I still think they, as a company, have a right to decide if they want to fire him or not. However, the fact that he's already apologized for this, but that's not good enough for people on the right, is troubling to me. Now, Ben, after this happened with James Gunn, he came out, posted on Twitter, and he wrote an extensive piece on Daily Wire saying that James Gunn should not have been fired. That was wrong for Disney to do that. And he says that, because then people started bringing up the things that Ben-Shapiro used to believe, or that he used to say back when he was 17 years old, and saying that Ben-Shapiro is a disgusting moron. And that was part of their going after Mark Duplass, and so on and so forth. So this mob on the left brought that up about Ben Shapiro. Now the mob on the right is doing the same thing with James Gunn. And this is so disturbing. And it's caused me to be like, you know what? We all just need to stop on both sides. We don't care anymore about forgiveness. We don't care anymore about a real redemption story. We don't care about listening to the other side. We just want to win. We just want to feel like we've accomplished something, when in reality, all we've done is further divide the culture even more. Do I think James Gunn is a jerk? Absolutely. But do I think it was right for those on the right to demand that he be fired for something like that? No, I don't. Especially because he apologized for it. The hypocrisy never ends. You see, we want to dig up all these nasty things about what James Gunn said, but we will defend to the death whenever Donald Trump or anybody else on the right that we think is on our side says that is equally, if not more, despicable. We will defend them, but we will crucify somebody else. Do you really truly believe that is going to help us? Do you think that is going to heal the rift that has been created between us? Is it going to? Or is it going to further put us into more tribes, further put us into more divisive natures that we don't want to hear or be friends with anyone on the other side at all? Do you think that's where we'll go? Because that's where we already are. I mean, how about those stories of people using these dating apps, saying, if you voted for Donald Trump, I don't even want to talk to you. Well, that became a big news on Fox News and other conservative outlets. The Trump supporters were outraged about that. Well, would you then date someone who voted for Hillary Clinton? Would you date anyone who did not vote for Donald Trump? Is that who you are? There are some things in life that are far more important than politics. Many things, actually. Politics is not on the priority list of things that are crucial to your existence. But we have turned it into a religion. We are far more willing to escape into our tribes, into our political religions, than our actual religions. We won't go to church. We won't study our Bible. We won't go to Bible study. We won't invest in people's lives, but we will absolutely tear your life apart if you say one darn thing against someone that I like. That's disgusting. It's wrong when the left does it, and it's wrong when the right does it. So there you are. We'll be right back. Okay, before we close up on the show today, I wanted to do something here. You may remember about a year ago, it was actually my very second, I don't think it was my first show, it was my second podcast for Lanterns. And you can even go back and look it up. And I talked about how, I posed the question, should we as Christians vote for someone who is not a Christian for public office? Should we vote for atheists? Should we vote for agnostics? Should we vote for Muslims, etc., etc., etc.? And at the time when I was discussing that, it was about Austin-Petersen, who, I don't know if he announced, but it was in the news that he was running for the Senate seat here in my home state of Missouri. And I opposed him at first because I believed that we as Christians should put constitutional conservative Christians in office. I believed that it was important to put, and I still do, that it's important to put people who believe in God and who believe in a higher power than themselves in office, so that way they don't become too obsessed with their own power. If they don't have someone like God above themselves, then they ultimately will want to play God. And, I had the best intentions there, and I still believe that it is the most ideal situation to have a Christian in office. But the more I've studied, the more I've researched, the more I've listened to people who disagree, the more I've come to realize that I think I was wrong. And here's why. First of all, many of the people who have been in power and are currently in power are people who claim to believe in Christ. They claim to be Christian. They claim to be Jewish. They claim to be people of different faiths, but they claim to be Christian. And many of them don't live it. People like Nancy Pelosi claims to be a Catholic, one of the biggest defenders of Planned Parenthood and abortion. You should look at, Chuck Schumer, I believe he's a Jew, I think. And the same with him. Very big government, liberal Democrat. And the policies that he supports, I would argue, go against the foundation of Judeo-Christian beliefs. Even on some on the Republican side, they claim one thing, but they do another. Well, if you're a Christian, that's being dishonest. It's being a hypocrite, and that's wrong. Now, we have had, and we do have, good Christian men and women in office. People like Ted Cruz, Mike Lee, Rand Paul, and people who are serving in the Trump administration, people like Nikki Haley and Mike Pence. So you do have that. But on the other side, you also have people, and have had people in the history of this country, who haven't believed in Christianity. Just look at our founding fathers. Not all of them were Christian. Some of them were Christian. Some of them, there were a few that did not believe in Christ. But they all had that same fundamental belief that you should be free to make your own decisions as long as they don't violate somebody else's rights. And they did still believe that government serves to protect those rights of the people found in the Constitution that simply name the rights that we've always had throughout human history, but we now acknowledge them. And you've also had others who've served in office or who have promoted liberty, and they weren't Christian. Penn Jillette, he's an atheist, but he's very pro-liberty, very pro-freedom. Now, he's, I think, as close to an anarchist as you can get without actually being an anarchist, but still, I've come to realize that, and I heard Ravi Zacharias explain this too, when looking for someone to vote for, look for someone, if you can't find a good Christian who is consistent, look for the person who will provide the best foundation, the best soil for you to plant your seeds and to grow your crops. Meaning, find the best person out there who will advance the causes of liberty and the Constitution. So that is why I will support Austin-Petersen for public office. I think he's a great choice. He ran for president in the 2016 election under the Libertarian Party, and he is pro-life. He's pro-Constitution. He wants to shrink the size of government. He wants to secure our borders, reduce spending and the debt. He wants to protect your Second Amendment rights. He believes that we should repeal the National Firearms Act and the Hughes Amendment. And he also believes in lowering taxes. He supports a flat tax, which is good. I support that as well. 15% across the board. And eliminate the self-employment tax. You can look all this up at austin-petersen.com. And he supports protecting life, getting rid of Planned Parenthood, allowing citizens to decide if what they want to support or not. He also, I think this is really cool. He says that we should also deregulate the adoption market to decrease the cost of adoption for families and increase the amount of expectant mothers who choose adoption for their unborn children, which I think is a great thing to advocate for, because so often we on the right, we pro-life people, will advocate for pro-life causes, but we don't also focus on the adoption agency and how we have to also make it easier for people to adopt, because it is expensive. It's very expensive, and it takes time. He doesn't want a nation build. He thinks that we should comply with the War Powers Resolution. No president, he says, should have the power to unilaterally declare war. He wants to fix immigration by securing the border and decrease the incentive for people to come here illegally. And he wants to completely repeal Obamacare, all these great things. Just look it up on his site. He goes into great detail. But he's someone that's very articulate. He's very smart. I have friends who've worked on his campaign, and they all vouch for him, actually. So I think he'd be a great choice. So do your own homework, though. I'm not telling you who to vote for, but if you're looking for somebody like that, I would research him more and just look into it and decide for yourself. If you don't, that's totally fine, but that's where I've ended up. All right, that's going to do it for the Blake Johnson program. We will see you back here next time on Monday. So take care, and God bless.